Everyone, hello, welcome to this, our first Original Theatre Facebook Live extravaganza event with Max Bowden and me. I'm Alistair Watley, I'm Artistic Director of Original Theatre Company. So Max is in St Albans. He's had a long day on set with EastEnders. He's just watched EastEnders, maybe you've just watched EastEnders. But this evening we're here to talk about The Haunting of Alice Bowles, which is our brand new production made both at home and in a graveyard. And we released it yesterday, and hopefully some of you have watched it. And we've got loads of questions which you've put for Max. So I'm going to just basically put your questions to him. And we've got them from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And I'm just going to go one at a time through them and hand over to Max. So, Max, how are you, firstly?
Great, yeah, good. We broke up for Christmas today, so yeah, I'm winding down slowly but surely.
Very nice. Okay. Well, look, let's get into your fans have come up with loads of great stuff. So we're going to start with a question from Marita, who asked on Twitter, what inspired you to pursue a career as an actor?
I think there were several kind of awakening moments. I remember some kind of clear times in which I really became obsessed with the theatre and obsessed with art. I saw the production of Jerusalem. I think it was in 2011, with Mark Rylance playing Rooster, and I was completely captivated by his performance. So yeah, he came on at the beginning of Act 2 doing a headstand on a skateboard, and I think I kind of went, I don't know why that makes so much sense, but it does. And I was fascinated by that kind of entity. So from a theatrical sense, I think that was a real awakening moment for me. And I also think some really brave and daring performances, Tony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs and Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight were two that I remember. So I think drawing on other people's performances and being infatuated by the art of it, really.
And we met, so I didn't know you as a TV actor at all, because we met when you came in. Did you audition? Did you come and audition for Birdsong?
Yeah. So
I got you in, didn't I?
You did, yeah, you did. So you're responsible, is what we're saying.
Yes.
No, Alistair got me in. We're going back. So I'd just done Waterloo Road, again for the BBC. And I was kind of in between a rock and a hard place because I wasn't really sure where my career was going. And Alistair brought me in for Birdsong, which, of course, we did a live version or an online production of this year. So we met going on 6 years ago. 6 wonderful years.
6 happy years they've been. Okay, so let's go to Kay. Kay asked on Twitter, Kay would like to ask, if you could star in any future production of any theatre show, what would it be and why? It's a good question.
Wow. That's a great question. There's not specific productions that I suppose I'm like naturally drawn to. I think there's writers. I think Roy Williams is brilliant. So James Graham as well, brilliant writer. And I really like new writing. I like kind of seeing things that haven't been done before, or certainly new takes. So. And obviously, I must say anything that original theatre does. So,
yes.
I mean, yeah, new writing really excites me. New and exciting ideas, current affairs, and things that haven't been done.
Do you like playing parts that are quite, in some ways, close to you, in either your voice or sort of similar experiences, or do you quite like pushing yourself and going completely outside of yourself? Those sort of transformational performances. Mark Rylance in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
You mentioned Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, I think every character has a kind of a balance between the two. You're drawing on parts of you in every aspect of your life. You find bits that correlate to something in every performance. But I think on the flip side, it's nice to transform and kind of dive into something as far away from yourself as possible. So it's a toss-up, and every character kind of has its differences and has its changeable aspects, I guess.
Okay, so let's segue from talking a little bit about acting and background into talking a bit about making Alice Bowles, because June on Facebook asked you, did you find it eerie filming in a cemetery the day after Halloween? So that's in reference to the shoot, so the filming shoot which Max was part of, and we went out to Suffolk to film in a graveyard. Max, was it eerie?
Yeah. So the shoot itself was amazing, really. We pulled up to this graveyard, and they put the heaters on in this church. So coming out of these windows was this kind of really smoky red light, and it looked like something straight out of a horror film, which wasn't ideal when you're about to start filming on a handheld camera, yourself holding a selfie stick in the middle of nowhere. But it was a full moon. The clouds were phenomenal. I think we took some amazing stills that night, and it was a really interesting night of work, because it was something that one had never been done and I'd never done. But two, the whole atmosphere and the ambience of where we were was captivating. It was very impressive.
It was properly remote. I remember I had no phone signal. It was in the middle of the Suffolk countryside, about 9 miles from the nearest town. So it's about in sort of the south of England, about as remote, I think, as you can get, really.
Yeah, it was, and I think I remember driving up to it and kind of going, I really am in the arse end of nowhere here. I had no idea where I was. It was great.
And look, as we're talking sort of spooky things, I mean, do you believe in ghosts? Is that are you sort of somebody who sort of has a fear or a belief in the supernatural?
I wouldn't say like a fear. I think spiritually, I guess I have some kind of feeling towards something being there. But no, strictly, I'm not afraid of ghosts. My partner is. She's terrified of them. Or the idea of them, the concept of ghosts.
But you've never seen a ghost?
No, not that I know of.
All right.
It'd be awful now if you're about to tell me a story in which I've been in contact with a ghost, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. We're going to come back to that. Laura on Facebook. So I think in reference to Birdsong, or maybe asked this question before watching this one, but she says, after filming at your house, do your neighbours avoid you now?
Oh yeah, I think they avoid me anyway. Obviously, I'm constantly doing different rehearsals, whether it be for EastEnders or for Haunting of Alice Bowles. And when Birdsong was going on, I was walking around the top floor, kind of in my army uniform, shouting it. Kind of explicit language at the top of my lungs on a green screen. So I think they just thought I was crazy. And not only that, I was away. I think I was out getting some shopping, and they had to. They watched someone come and bring all the parcels round to the house, and they kind of just must have thought it was like Christmas, until they realised that it was like World War I uniforms. So I think they think I'm crazy. Is the long and short of it. Lovely people, they truly are, but I'm sure they think I'm mad. We
had to smuggle in a gun, didn't we, James?
We did. Sort of yeah. It was unloaded and whatever you call it. But yes, there was I got sent a gun around. An old German Luger. So yeah, that was quite funny.
And how did you find, so the Karen on Instagram sort of says, how do you find it using a green screen? You usually have your other cast members to bounce off. Do you find it hard to portray the emotion, which you are usually so good at? It must be strange to film.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I guess what was nice about both Haunting and Birdsong is that we had a Zoom table reads and a kind of in-depth conversation about journey and arc of character and objectives within scenes. So the homework was kind of done before going onto the floor, which is always nice. But from an impulsive place, I think it's of course it's very difficult to not have someone live bouncing off of you and just having a Zoom camera to play with. But yeah, I don't really know. I guess you kind of lose yourself in that moment because you're trying to get the right shot, you're trying to get the right energy of the scene. So I guess it's just different. To answer that question, I think it's just different.
And what was interesting to watch, because obviously I saw you rehearse for Birdsong on stage, and then I was part of the process for Birdsong when we made it at home. But there's quite a few emotional scenes that your character Tipper had. In fact, of all the characters, he sort of, was in tears quite a lot. How did you find sort of having to just sort of produce tears and emotion sort of, you're right, that at this point, in this scene, without any sort of warm-up on stage, you get the hour leading up to that to sort of build into it. But you just got to kind of press, shoot and go. So how does that
and that's the kind of the beautiful thing about the medium that we're playing with now, with this new format that Original have kind of created, is it's kind of somewhere in the middle of theatre, television and film. Now, when we're doing EastEnders, it's so fast-paced that that you kind of don't have that lead up in your journey to find that emotional kind of climax. You have to find it immediately and quite quickly. Whereas on stage, like as Alistair said, I kind of had an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and 10 minutes to find Tipper's emotional journey of getting to the point where he wants to commit suicide before going over the top. So the balance of being able to kind of find it quickly and deal with emotion quite quickly kind of comes from that craft at EastEnders, which is so fast-paced and so on the ball constantly that we film so out of sync. So you've got to really know your arc and really know kind of where your character's at to find it, I think.
All right, so as you mentioned EastEnders, there's a question here from Dom on Twitter. He says, what's it like being in a big soap like EastEnders?
Well, it's wonderful. I mean, we're very lucky to have a great team. It's a lot of pressure. You're constantly, dealing with everyday issues. So you feel like you're representing a lot of people when you're telling them stories. But fundamentally, at its core, it's a joy. And of course, it has its tough times. It's a tough job. It takes a lot out of you because of the hours and the constant work rate. But yeah, it's a joy.
So, because with theatre, we obviously got all the social side. We're, Max and I were on tour, so we have, we come out with sort of the adrenaline's up at 10:30, and pre-COVID times, we go into the bars or the clubs, and it was a lovely sort of family feeling, which is, the social side was great. But, this morning you say you're up at 5 for those early. So how does the social side, is it completely different with sort of EastEnders and filming in general?
I mean, it's a tough question because it's very much a job at EastEnders, in which we don't necessarily always see each other outside of work, but we're incredibly close and we share a lot with each other, because we see each other every day. And obviously you have certain people like in the cast, like Tony and Jamie, who I'm very close with, and you have them relationships where you do see them a lot outside of work, but it's just not there's too many people in our company at EastEnders to all go out every night, and the people have got families. Whereas when you're on tour, you're constantly travelling together, you're constantly working together, you rehearse together. Everything is done to that schedule as a team. And EastEnders, everyone's on different rotas because you're filming different stuff on different days. As a theatre, you're a company, you're constantly together.
So, like today, how many people would you say were involved on set with you today?
Well, I was across a few teams today, so there was a fair few. As it was the last day, we had to get everything done, and because of social distancing and everything, people are on different sets, so we don't really see them. So I think I worked with probably 7 people today, but in different units.
And then, but how big are each of those units? So in terms of the crew?
Completely depends on the day, where you're filming. Obviously, because of COVID restrictions, there's less people in every scene. So maximum probably about 6 now.
All right.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you used to be able to have about 25 people in the Vic, but not these days.
Okay. So let's stay with EastEnders. Hannah on Twitter says, can you ask Max, what was it like working with his friend Tamsin again? I'm laughing because I know what the answer is on.
Well, I mean, the beauty of the way that we filmed was that Tamsin and I didn't actually get to work together at all. Alistair and I had a conversation, and Janie D had sadly had to pull out. So I just said, well, look, why don't I speak to Tamsin? Tamsin's obviously a really good friend of mine. And I knew how well she'd fit within that kind of original theatre mould. She's very much like a company member, good team player. So I said, why don't I call Tamsin? Now, by the time Tamsin had actually started filming and got involved, I'd already done my stuff. So it was kind of a kind of off the cuff decision. But obviously, with all the group Zooms, like last night, we had like a kind of cast drinks, if you like. I was actually in bed on my FaceTime to Alistair and Tamsin and all of the cast. So, you know, Tam and I are, we're very close and we talk all the time, but we just didn't get to actually spend scenes together within this. But that was fine. I mean, I thought she was terrific in this.
Okay, here's another one. Cam on Twitter. So let's jump back from film and TV into theatre. And Cam asks, what's your favourite part about working in theatre?
It's a different feeling every night. The great thing about theatre is you've got to have a huge amount of stamina because you are telling the same story over and over again. And in doing that, you have to find moments of nuance and moments of freshness within it. And I think, particularly with touring theatre, each venue is very different, and nothing was more clear. The clarity on that was made apparent when we were doing Birdsong. We were doing it in places like Portsmouth, which is an incredibly kind of army-based town or city, a navy-based city. So the story of Birdsong hit a lot truer there than it did in some other cities, kind of not so coastally. So every story that you tell kind of has its place in a different part of society, which I always find quite interesting. You can go to Newcastle and it can play one way, and then you can go to Richmond and it can play completely different. We found that with running times as well. It's I mean, Alistair, you'll vouch for me on that. You find maybe it's us actors egging it in different towns when we get a different reaction, but it certainly extends.
Do you remember we were in Crewe? I think that's you and I nearly fell out.
Yes.
So what happened was, we're in Birdsong. I was in that show as well, and we had a little thing backstage, and Max would always hand me over a rifle. He was sort of almost half in character. And it became, we did hundreds of these, and it all happened. But then on the last night, we were in Crewe, and I think Peter Duncan wanted to get home or something, but the running time got really short.
4 minutes shorter.
Yeah, and I thought the only reason that could be was because people wanted to get home. So then on Shrewsbury, on the Monday, it was the penultimate week of the tour. I came in and sort of got a bit cross with you all. But then normally the director can then just, leave you to it. And then, the actors can be cross with the director for a bit. But I had to go on stage with you. You were still fuming. And it was the one night you never passed the rifle over. Yeah.
Did I not?
Yeah, you didn't do it. You were still really cross.
I was probably worried that you were still angry with us. It was 4 minutes shorter. I remember it. It was the last. You were right. It was the last night at Crewe. That's hilarious.
It doesn't sound a lot, 4 minutes, but if we were to stop talking for 4 minutes now, it would feel like a lifetime.
Oh my, yeah. I remember the first half was an hour, meant to be an hour and 24, and it was an hour and 20. Yeah, it was a massive jump.
Okay, so Jen on Twitter, this is a good question. When reading scripts to learn lines, do you keep to your own themes, or do you read the whole thing? Or do you have a different process depending on whether it's a TV role or a theatre role? It's just something I always wondered.
It's a great question, and it does actually, for me, depend on the role and the format as well. With starting with EastEnders, because we get scripts with a kind of short capacity of time for learning. Just because of the nature of the show, I tend to draw out my character arcs beforehand, and then I learn the lines kind of 2 days before. So I get my schedule on the Thursday, and then on the Saturday I will do Monday's lines, Sunday I'll do Tuesday's lines. So all of my character arcs are there, and I haven't got to do any of the kind of the formal work on the scripts. It's more just the kind of the line learning, then the kind of manual bit of it, and the taking that in. But with something where it's kind of the length of Alice Bowles or the length of Birdsong, I think it's very important to gauge the tone of the piece by learning it all as one, so you've got all of that arc together, but also you know what the tone of the previous scene is. Because if you have two different timelines or two different stories running simultaneously and the tone's completely off, I think it can influence the work in a negative way. So it depends on what I'm doing, and also how much the role needs, I guess, as well.
Have you found that you've got really good at line learning now? As in, you can learn, you can almost look at something and it just goes in.
Yes, I actually winged it today. I had a scene in which I totally forgot to learn, a 3-page scene, and I looked at it twice, and it was gone. So I think it's a skill. It's a skill in itself that you kind of develop whilst doing a show like EastEnders, because things are constantly changing, and you're having to, sometimes we have to throw in a scene last minute to so say if it was the World Cup final on the Monday morning, we may have to shoot a scene to put in that Monday night. So you develop that skill. Your brain starts to work differently.
And does it just drop the scene so you finish it and then it's gone? So you sort of
yes.
Remember the scene
unless you watch it and then you go, oh yeah, no, I remember that now. Yes, so definitely it does go. It's almost like a recycling bin.
How far ahead do you film EastEnders? So what's the lag between you filming and then it going out?
9.5 weeks generally. So you've got to feel for me. I've basically been living Christmas for 3 months.
Was Christmas in like September time for you?
We filmed Christmas in late September, October.
So it's strange. We're in a parallel kind of universe, which is 3 months ahead of where we're at.
Yeah. So every year, so you got to think when in June we've got our t-shirts on in the square, it's actually probably -4. Yeah, it's not ideal. Yeah.
All right, okay, let's get back to Alice Bowles. Here's Laura on Twitter asking, how did you rehearse for The Haunting of Alice Bowles? Was it all done via Zoom?
Yes. Yeah, it was Philip Franks who was taking direction alongside Alistair. We got together a couple of times on Zoom, and a lot of phone calls as well. I'd kind of speak to Pip and question anything going forward, because you just want to make sure that come the record, you're in the right place to kind of attack it as freely as possible, because as everything at the moment with COVID and also busy schedules elsewhere with EastEnders, it was important to just kind of go in with the right headspace.
And is it you, in terms of, you work with Alex, who played Caitlin, Alex Gelf, and you're playing boyfriend girlfriend with a history, but you had, what was it, a sort of a rehearsal with Philip over that Zoom session, and then the next thing you know, you're in a graveyard, and you're playing people that've got quite a rich history. So how does that work? What's it like, sort of suddenly, partnering up with somebody who you just met?
I think it's important to in a lot of circumstances as an actor, you're thrown into situations which are kind of out of your control. And a lot of times in auditions or what have you, you kind of have to release all your inhibitions and just go, fuck it, like, you're there. So I think with Alex, which was great, is she was kind of on the same wavelength. We discussed it a lot over Zoom, and she was very on it with her backstory, and we knew kind of what we wanted to achieve out of the relationship and the pairing. So I think it's about just releasing them inhibitions, going free-minded into it, and going, right, okay, here's what we want to achieve, and here's how we're going to do it.
Talking of Matt, then, your character, Karen asks, are you anything like your character? So this is referring to Matt in The Haunting of Alice Bowles.
I think the thing is, certainly in this year, in this current climate, I think we can all find ourselves a little bit in Matt, in the kind of the desperation and the kind of loss that he's at with himself, kind of unknowing, uncertain of what's around the corner, and kind of, because of the nature of his circumstances, not feeling particularly fulfilled. So definitely I've found similarities within myself and Matt. And kind of more as I discovered him, I think there's a lot there that was kind of subtext with Matt, and it was never outwardly kind of discussed with Caitlin or with anyone about how he was truly feeling, and I think that subtext was what made him quite interesting.
Hannah says, would you ever become a YouTuber like Matt? So it might be worth, for those who haven't watched it, explain a bit about who he is, maybe, and then answer that.
Yeah, so Matt is this kind of YouTubing urban explorer, kind of looking for some way to success. Hasn't really got any money. He's got no job, so he's into history. So he starts kind of going around to graveyards and exploring different pandemics, and he's not particularly good at it, or certainly hasn't got the following in which he's required to have to make good money from it. To answer your question, would I think about doing? I just don't think I'm that way built. I don't think I'm. First of all, I'm incredibly unsavvy when it comes to tech, so that probably wouldn't help my cause. Also, I just don't find myself that interesting a lot of the time. So I think unless I had to find some other thing to YouTube about, but no, I can't see it being my forte.
All right, so here's a question then from me. So unlike Matt, you've got loads of followers, and I've commented to you that your fans are amazing. I mean, they're really supportive, and they've been great and supportive for our projects as well as your projects. But what's it like to have sort of such a following of people that are so invested in you and your career?
It comes with challenges as well, but it's truly, I've got some of the most wonderful people following me, and I'm so grateful for everything that they do. They help out, in every aspect. When I put something up for fundraising for my grandfather, they did that, and it's not just the following of the show that I really appreciate. It's the kind of following me as a person and kind of wanting to help me and my friends, and they're just a really good group of people. So it comes with pressures, you want to make sure that you're doing right by them and also by yourself, but they're incredibly supportive, and I'm very lucky.
Hannah, what's the scariest experience you've ever had?
Oh, that's a great question. Scariest experience I've ever had. Do you know, I don't think I could put my hand on one. I think the first time I crashed my mum's car when I'd just passed my test, and I think that was that was scary, because that was my first car crash, and I'd just gone straight into the back of someone. And it was totally not my fault. Yeah, that was pretty scary. So I'm going to go with that.
Okay, yeah, that sounds beastly.
Beastly.
Ali on Twitter, how do you get into character? We sort of touched on this a little bit, but maybe you could go further. And is there anything that you do to get into the acting mindset?
I listen to a lot of music, so I feel like music is a really good connector of emotion, and kind of different challenges within the mind. So I generally make a playlist. If I'm doing a play, I'll always find a playlist to kind of suit the act. So I was doing a play a couple of years ago, Closer, and I'd listened to a lot of soft ballads in the first act, to emotionally connect with the part of Dan who was kind of emotionally challenged and slightly out of control with his own mind and his dealings with women. So I think music's something that I use a lot. Certainly with Ben, I listen to a lot of Eminem and hardcore rap music because he's constantly battling with himself and this kind of noise in his own head. So music's a really good way for me.
And a question from me is, you've been playing Ben now for over a year and a few months, is that?
Yeah, 18, nearly, I think it's about a year and 8 months I've been on screen, yeah.
Is that the longest you've ever spent with one character?
Yeah. Yes, it is, yeah.
And so
and I guess with Tipper, I put Tipper away for 5 years. But with Ben, yeah, I've been with him now for 18 months, and it feels like a relationship with him.
That's what I want to ask about. So when you were playing Tipper, even if you've been playing him for 5 years, your relationship, as in your journey with him, is the same every night. Now, your experience of playing that might be slightly different, but
yes.
Ben presumably is on a completely changing narrative and a journey that changes day to day. So what is your relationship with him? You, Max, with Ben, do the two worlds ever do you find yourself becoming more similar to him, thinking like him?
Do you know what? It's a great question, and I think I've kind of touched on it before in interviews. And it's like I truly do get Ben's narrative and Ben's kind of. It's a ridiculously cynical and unjust way of thinking a lot of the time. But I get it. I don't agree with it, and fundamentally, it's morally not my compass. But I do get it, and a lot of the time, I don't like Ben, and I get personally frustrated with his choices, and I question his choices. But in terms of a relationship, it's like you kind of talk yourself into understanding them. And he makes a lot of shitty mistakes. So to come round full circle and kind of go, right, okay, so why has he made this mistake? And finding a justification for him can be difficult sometimes, because actually he's not justified in a lot of the things that he does, but I have to find his justification. And that can sometimes be a challenge.
And do you want him to sort of have a happy ending? Are you sort of the actor playing the part, sort of rooting for him and him kind of getting out of trouble fight, or alternatively, you just looking at it as the actor going, oh, that's a good scene, or I like that sort of emotional thing, even if what he's doing is diabolical?
Well, I think the thing is we all love drama. We love drama, and fundamentally that's what soap does well. It tells good dramatic stories to a wide audience, and I think of course I want Ben to find happiness and inner peace, but at the same time I love playing as an actor. Selfishly, I love playing the grit and the kind of the different turbulence that Ben has. So I guess you kind of can't have one without the other.
All right, so let's completely go in a different direction from Ben, and this is from Char, or I hope I'm saying that right, Char on Twitter. What's been the most, no, not that one, let's come back to that one. Let's go to Ben. Would you ever do something like Grease or Hairspray?
Oh, God, listen, if you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I'd have absolutely said yes. I just think at this time, for me, that direction isn't where I'm ready to go. But, I never say never. You never know.
Is that just musical theatre in general, or a specific sort of type of musical theatre, or is that theatre in general?
Well, I think musical theatre, kind of classics such as Grease. I think if something of new writing came along that was a really story-driven piece, certainly I'd think more into it. But them kind of classics are just not right now where I want to be.
Do you remember my birthday party a couple of years ago? And my present, along with the chocolate bar you bought me, was also I asked you to sing from Dear Evan Hansen.
Dear Evan Hansen, that's right.
Waving through behind a window, and I made you sing it.
You did. That was the day before I started EastEnders.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
The day before I started.
And we had a very nice evening, if I recall.
We did, yeah. We had a lovely dinner. And I think I actually got quite drunk and was hungover at my first day at work, but no one needs to know.
I wasn't going to bring that up as yes, but that is true. Yes, it was true. Okay, so let's go back to Sharon. What's been the most challenging role that you've ever had to do in your career?
I think for what it is, Ben is a challenge every day. Because of the reasons that I've said, he's high maintenance, he's unjust, he makes a lot of rash decisions and a lot of silly mistakes. And also his natural relationships around him are that spur negativity. He's in general he's kind of come from a neglectful father, and his mother was away for a long time, so he's kind of built up all this inner tension within himself and battling with himself, along with that his own insecurities, and I think he's just such a complex and layered character that I think certainly when you're playing it for a long period of time, it can take its toll and it can be difficult, but I care about him a lot, so I think Ben has been the biggest challenge for sure.
How do you think you'll feel if, because there's been, how many actors have played Ben? How many of incarnations have there been?
6.
So at some point, if you hand the baton of Ben over, unless he survives that long, how do you think that would feel to, somebody that you've sort of been with for that period of time, and then you're just going to hand him over? Say to me.
Well, if it was to you, I'd be terrified. No, listen, I hope that doesn't ever happen, because I care greatly about Ben. But it's weird, isn't it? When you come from a theatrical background, you never think about recasts as being anything, because in theatre we often see the shows recast all the time. You go to a West End show 1 month, you'll have a certain cast in, then they have a second cast come in. But with telly, because we're so embedded into it, and I think certainly with something like EastEnders, because it's in your front room and you grow up watching it, you do become affiliated with the characters. So I mean, I'd be personally gutted, but I'm very, very happy with Ben at the moment. I don't want to see him go.
And that ties us nicely, I think, to this question here. So Benny, Max, do you have a role in any other plays for 2021? And I suppose, and my addendum to that is, do you have an idea of how long you want to stay within the EastEnders world, or are you not thinking about that at all at the moment?
I'm not thinking about that at all at the moment. I'm just incredibly happy where I am. They've been brilliant to me, and I've been so lucky to tell great stories constantly. So I'm not thinking like that at all. I'm just enjoying it while I'm doing it. It's still a joy every day.
And Janella asked, this came in on Twitter, and she said, do you have a preference with film, TV, or theatre?
My love is theatre. I adore theatre, and I adore what it represents, and I adore what it gives the actor. But I don't have a preference between doing any of them. I think they all have their own different perks and different pros and cons. But my first love, and what I fell in love with, was theatre. So it's a great thing about working with original, is you get to kind of flicker between it all.
Jumping back into EastEnders, how would you sum up working with Steve McFadden? That's from Aaron.
A gift. He's Steve's not just one of, if not the best actor in soap. He's also one of the best actors in the country, in my opinion, in terms of what he gives to a scene. He's one of the most giving actors I've ever worked with, and he's incredibly intuitive. So it's a joy. It's a joy, and we argue like a little like father and son, because we care, but we both love what we do. It's a joy.
And when you're shooting a scene on set, how much are you aware of the fact that this is going to get seen by millions of people. And on a theatre, you know, you've got 1,000 people, maybe 1,500 if you're in a really big theatre. But the scene that you shot, say today, the scenes that millions of people, millions, are going to watch it. Do you think about that consciously when you're sort of on set, or does it just feel sort of like any other job?
Not until you remind me, funnily enough. Do you know what you do? I think when I first came on screen, you're very conscious of it, because it's a completely new world, and it's a place that you haven't gone to. And I was incredibly conscious of it there, but then you realise that you haven't got time to be. You get over it, and I think there's a danger to either become too complacent or to kind of really have this self-loathing. So it kind of goes to the back of your mind, and it's still there. Obviously, you're aware of the show that you're on and the status in which it holds within people's living rooms. So of course it's there, but you kind of have to take the pressure off yourself, otherwise you wear yourself up.
And finally, I think we'll sort of wrap up now. I think we've been through all about 32 questions or so at least here. Just making sure I have not missed any. Oh, let's ask June. As we just amble gently back towards Alice from Albert Square. As June asks, are you a fan of horror films? And if so, do you have a favourite one?
Oh, great question. Yes, I am. I like slashers. I kind of struggle with, ironically, with paranormal stuff. When I first watched Paranormal Activity, I remember being in the cinema and I was shit scared. Psycho is a classic. I think that would be up there. I think it's not. Probably, I don't know if it classifies as a horror, but The Shining, for me, would definitely be up there, and Clockwork Orange.
Shining, yeah, I mean they are classics. But did you find after, say, when you watched Paranormal Activity, were you just scared in the cinema, or did it keep you up at night, or was it just like
it kept me up at night. I remember being in the cinema and sitting, when you sit cross-legged on a chair because you're worried that whatever's going to just grab your leg and just take you under the seat. I think I was a bit like that. But no, I've got better over the years, I promise.
And finally, I think it's probably worth saying that why we made the production in the first place, which is that all the theatres sort of are closed, and they have even all the ones going into tier 3, loads and loads of productions, pantomimes have all been shuttered, closed down, almost tonight as we speak. I think that's the last show for John and Anne-Marie in Windsor, their pantomime, our friends who run Theatre Royal Windsor, but many other shows. So, I mean, what's been your experience of being an actor with a love of theatre through the coronavirus and sort of watching its impact on, companies and your friends and other freelancers?
Well, it's kind of getting scarier by the week at the moment. Even EastEnders as a massive show was shut for 4 months, and the theatres have been shut now since March. And just as they got going again, they've had to shut once again. So all these actors that have created brilliant shows, producers that have created brilliant shows, have all had to shut down, leaving a lot of people with no income just before Christmas, and a lot of people with no kind of source of art and outlet. Several regional theatres, some of which we've played in, Alistair, are looking at either severely getting rid of staff or closing down. Regional theatres across the country, I think, are being decimated, and the support is minimal. And a lot of places haven't been lucky enough to receive grants. So it's a scary time for the industry. I spoke to my agent yesterday about he sent me an email just saying, I'm sorry that it's been such a sad year for the industry and for everyone. And it was a group email just saying, I really hope that we can find solace in it getting better next year. But they're kind of clinging on to that hope. And that's why it's brilliant that Original Theatre is still creating, but this isn't the way that they want to be doing it necessarily all the time. They want to be back on stage, and we've just got to hope that something brilliant happens in 2021, because I think the arts depend on it.
I think that's a good somber but important note to finish on. So look, guys, thank you all very much for all your questions. Thank you for all your support, both for Birdsong, for Haunting of Alice Bowles, and all the shows, in fact, that have come on to Original Theatre online. And you can watch the Haunting of Alice Bowles. It's up there until the end of February, I believe. So do check it out if you've not seen it already. And Max, thank you ever so much. It's been lovely to chat to you.
And as ever to you, Alistair.
Okay. And we may do one of these in the future. Thank you so much for all the comments that have come in and all the questions. We really, really appreciate it. And for those of you that joined at 8, sorry again for delaying you, but hope that you've enjoyed this question and answer session with Max Bowden. All right, guys, we're going to say goodnight. I'm going to have a martini. Max is going to go to bed. We'll speak to you soon. All right. Thank you and good night.
Cheers, guys.